said, what we're going to be doing is going through the dataset, talking about some visuals, some bits and pieces. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to talk about different other things as well. And of course, my question to all of you is, it's already been a little of time since the challenge has actually officially started. So my question to you is, have you already started to work on the report? If so, how's it going, and what are the main challenges that you're currently facing? Right? It doesn't necessarily have to be that everyone's doing it, but I like to have a little bit of a dialogue because I don't have anybody else by my side today, so kind of have to fill in the air somehow. Hi, Cornelius. So yeah, let us know how you're doing with your reports, if you started or not, what are the challenges, and so forth. From my side, there's a couple of things to be covering as well today. So some of you might have noticed this on social media. We have been talking about it very, very broadly now, and we're kind of happy to say this, that what we did is we the way on how we issue the developer accounts, and now it's available. We have the developers licenses, right? Instead of having a developer account, which was the previous, for an option to get a developer's license. What is the main difference? So with the developer's account, there was a physical login details that we were sending to you to be using in order to use the licensed version of the. Now, if I share the screen, should be the right one. There we go. If you go to the main page, you can see developments, top right, developer's license. If you go to the challenge page as well. So for those who had it previously, the developer account, you're using those, don't worry about it. There is just a different way that you can do it now as well. So you could sign up. I'm just going to use my Microsoft. There we go. And you can see here, I have see my license. For those of you who haven't done this, get my license or get free developer's license. I don't remember that. The idea is there. So once you sign up for the license, essentially what's it going to ask for you is going to be the email account to verify that you're an actual user, and then it's going to give you the developer's license. Now, what does the developer's license actually incline? Don't pay attention to this. This is a drawback of having a developer account on your own company, right? So some working and non-working licenses, and it feels, but hey, I have active and non-active licenses. It's the way it is. Hi, Filani. But yeah, so the way it's gonna work is you now get a developer's license. The difference is that previously you had a physical account that you just have to log in. And once you logged in, you also guys probably remember that you were also getting a lot of these different visuals downloaded automatically because that's associated with the user account. The benefit of having a developer's license now and not an account is that if you already have an existing Power BI account that you're using for work, where you have your own, domain already registered and everything, you can use these developer licenses on your own account. You don't have to use the developer's account as a separate thing. So you don't have to log in, log out, back and forth, make sure you're using the right account and so forth. You can use it on a single account, and that's going to be just your license. So it's one of the benefits of having a developer's license, right? Now, once you go in here, there's a couple of things that I want you to know. Of course, you can there's get started if you're new, just to understand how things are working and so forth. But there are two important things for you as a developer, I would say. The first is to understand what actually the developer's license covers. So if you go on the left hand side right here, custom visuals, the developer's license covers every single one of our visuals, right? Every single one that is out there on the App Store, you can utilize with the developer's account. The developer's account does have some restrictions, and you read more about it under the blog. So I'm going to find a blog post as well so you can just find it. Developer's license. And I'm pretty sure that my colleague Alexandra is also going to post that link, so it's just a little bit easier to find it. But this is the blog post which explains it and more what are the differences and so forth, right? But the main idea is you get access to every single one of our visuals. You can have to worry about it. So that's the good thing, and you can use it on your own account. The custom section is there for mainly one reason, and that is so you know which visuals are covered, especially if you are a new user, what actually do we offer, right? Don't forget that you also, when downloading the dataset, you get this cheat sheet. In the cheat sheet, this of it is to kind of highlight can be replaced from native visuals to our visuals. So look at this, look at the visuals that you have on the website. That gives you a good idea of, okay, what's possible, what's out there. So that's one thing. The other thing, let's go back to subscriptions. And I'm going to pick my developer's license. So I want to get more information of this license. The next thing that's important to you is going to be this one right here. So you got your license. Now, how do I apply the license, or how do I use the license? Essentially, there are two different ways. For some of you who have been using Power BI for a little while, you probably know there's a thing, right? It allows you to use your own color palettes, different formatting options that are preset, and so forth. If you have already a pre-existing theme, just upload your own theme, and it's gonna give you the theme back. So with your key and hash. If you don't have a theme, don't worry. It's not rocket science. If it's your first time, you can still pretty simply do it. To do here is just click on this download license. What it's gonna do is gonna download a file with mention of .json, which is basically a textual file. Within that file, open it up as well. I know looks a bit nerdy, but don't worry. Nope, this one. So what essentially the theme file consists of is few variables that we have predefined, and these are the main two. They can hash values because you need these values in order to unlock. So once you download that JSON file, you don't worry, have to open it. You don't have to see it ever again. Just know that that file is what you need. Once you get the JSON file, you go to your report, or you start working on a report. On the top ribbon, you find the section. Right here, where you have all the different color options, you use the drop down, find the option of browse for themes. You find the theme that you just loaded. The theme is the JSON file that you downloaded. In my case, it would be this. And if I double click on it, see it overrides it with a different color palette. In this case, it's just the default color palette working. If I click on the question mark, it's going to tell me, hey, you have a developer's license active for 353 days. So that's it. In my case, since I'm using just a different color theme, what I can do is just go forward, and I'm gonna put back the colors that I had so I can kind of orientate it more. And what I did is actually wanted to switch out these two colors a bit. I don't know, I felt kind of purple today. So I wanted to start off with that one. There we go. This is what I'm sticking with. But yeah, so applying a theme that allows the visuals to understand that there's a developer's account. Once it's being activated under license key and hash, there's going to be values preset, so you can use the visuals, all the features, and everything. So good news to you guys, it's a lot more simple, and you can use every single visual without any restrictions whilst you're developing reports. It's a lot more convenient, especially for those who are working with not just, for example, challenge reports, but also with your actual work reports or something like that. So you can utilize the same account rather than just going back and forth between 10 different accounts, right? So that's a massive benefit. Now, what we have regarding the data set itself. So what we have is we have a data set regarding different complaints. And within it, we basically have two different tables. I'm going to clear the filters. Actually, let's go to Power Query. So what we have is we have three different data sources. One of them is data dictionary. You don't have to pull it in. I've said it multiple times before. The main reason why I do it is because, well, I'd rather do this and go to Power Query than to open up an Excel file and just go back and forth between the Excel, between Power BI. Whenever I need this, whenever I'm developing things, I keep it here. Whenever I am done with the report, I can remove it. Or remember, there are different ways on how you can handle it. You can also disable the load, for example, not including refresh. You can also go ahead on Power BI desktop side and just go to the table view. I'm going to collapse everything, find data dictionary, and you can hide it here. and then on the report view, it's no longer here. See? So there are different ways on how you can tackle this. If I re-enable the view, it's here. Probably not needed here because it doesn't really give you any benefits. So we'll disable it here, but this is where I usually come back. So I work with the report, I look at some of the columns and be like, census region. What does that actually mean? Go back to the table view, complaint facts, census region, US Census region for the state, Northeast. Okay, got it. So that way I classify my report and classify my data to better understand what's available to me. For those of you who have worked on these reports before, you already know that you have freedom to decide however you want to tackle these challenges and how you want to look at these particular, for example, data sets. But for those of you who are new, one of the things that I highly encourage you to do, go to the challenge page right here, open up the brief section, and just read through this, right? The main reason why I recommend this is because here are some ideas on what you could look into. When do complaints rise and fall over time? So that could be a timeline, maybe with some seasonality or conditional formatting applied to it. Which states and regions? So that could be probably a map. What products and subproducts? Maybe a combo bar, maybe a donut, depending on how many products we have. So this is the way I look at these things, right? I get some ideas from here, I go to the actual report, and then I start building things, and I'm like, okay, that could be an interesting view or dimension that I could investigate there. A couple of things with that, though, is that if you look at it a little bit more closely, like for if we go to where was it? I think. Let's see. Yeah. So you can see we have issues, we have sub issues. But even if we're looking at different issues, some of these could actually be grouped together. So for example, you can have even like a parent issue group, which would be account opening, closing account. So those could be all account related. Then it's purchase related, something else related, right? Remember, the base data set that we give you is exactly that. It's the base data set. You don't have to use all of it. You can rework it. You can add additional columns. It's completely up to you, right? The main reason why we give you these data sets is basically to kind of push you a little bit out of the comfort zone, so you're not always working with exactly the same data sets, which is one of the struggles that typically people have when they work on a report building within a company, because you work with very similar data, very similar reports, right? So then suddenly, if you're asked to do something else, it's kind of hard to get out of that mindset of what exactly are the KPIs that I need to showcase, how do I showcase them, and so forth, right? So these different challenges are basically giving you a way to play around with what else is out there, what are different data sets, what are different visuals that we're using, and so forth. So what I did here is I went with a very basic approach, right? I decided that I want to understand how many complaints I have in total, how many company counts, how many companies in total, and what's the average time till response. And this you can actually you have already predefined. So you have this response time and date. And if we're looking at the dictionary, response time and days, calculated days between date submitted and company response. So you don't have to even do this, right? Just be careful with it, because you decide to just throw it in, this number makes 0 sense, right? Make sure you apply some critical. If you look for something like an average, now this makes a little bit sense. You could, of course, like min, max, minimum 0 days. So based on the same day, maximum 30 days. That's a little bit rough, but sort of an understanding, right? So you could go for, if you play around with the new cards, not just the regular cards, you could have average number or the average time to risk as a main KPI, and little secondary KPI reference labels for min max. So basically, where it is something like this, right? So that would be the main. reference labels could be the same, but instead of sum, I'm gonna go for max, and this is gonna be like this, right? I'm not saying it's what you should do. This is just an idea. Because remember, things that you can play around with. There's different formatting options that you can apply to this. These are an environment where you can play around with things. That is the main member. Try to learn something new. Try to go outside of your comfort zone. All right, so a couple of KPIs. I created a timeline. Understand, okay, how are these complaints are actually filling in? So this is on a yearly basis. I could switch to quarterly, to monthly view. Monthly, a little bit too granular. Quarterly, maybe, but I think because we have a lot of years, a yearly view is just fine. Okay, gonna keep that because this allows me to do, for example, the following. I can say, okay, I'm gonna focus on 2022 and 2023. Okay, cool. Click on the highlight, drill down only onto those 2 years. This is a quarterly view. I want to see it on a monthly view. So just switch around, zoom in if you need to, and so forth. So this is one way on how I want to play around with it. For the chart itself, what I also did is I made sure to remove any of the unneeded toolbar items. So in this case, I didn't keep the back button. I didn't keep the linear and logarithmic scale button. Mainly, we don't need logarithmic link here. And having just a random button that does something that people might not necessarily fully understand is unneeded. It's an excessive. So remove that. For display periods, I don't know if you noticed this or not, with one of the latest releases, we actually have a bunch of different more display periods. Now you have like last calendar's week, last calendar, last month, like different variations of it. And if this full list, but you just want to still on like 2 or 3 of them, depending on how much data you have, you can go for display periods. And right here, you can see you can enable or disable every single one of them. So again, as a developer, you're in full control over why you're showcasing something, right? You don't need to showcase everything, have scroll bars just because, well, hey, might need it. It's better to ask the customer and be like, okay, let's keep it to maybe like 4 or 5. If we need more, we're going to add it later. But for now, there's no reason to have additional scroll bars because remember, every single action I need to take is a step, is a time that I'm basically wasting to find what I'm actually looking for. So having a scroll bar, if it's not needed, get rid of it. Remove the options, keep just a few of them so I can get to the result a lot faster, right? Same goes for display periods. In my case, well, there's not that many. Oh, come on. There we go. Thank you. It just decided to freeze there, right? Because why not? Yeah, so the same for display periods. Not periods, sorry, for display units. Years, quarters, months. If you want to go on a more granular basis, also on a daily level. In this case, the reason why it's not showing, even though I have it in the hierarchy, because you can see here it is, but here you don't see it, is because if I go to a monthly, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. 7 times 12, that's already a pretty decent amount of data points that I have to showcase. If I would switch all of this to a daily view, there's just not enough pixels to really showcase the value. However, if I, for example, zoom in only into 2 year, you can see the day option shows up because you can see these are just 2 years, right? If I would have this granularity for 7 years, there's just not enough pixels to properly show this. So the chart kind of eliminates that option. But you still have the option, of course, to kind of scroll back and forth if you want to investigate on a granular basis. So that option is still there. So that is one of the things. Something else that we added to all facet type charts, so columns, lines, and areas for those, is under advanced settings, you have scrolling and zooming. Depending on the orientation of the chart, zooming, for example, for the timeline, if I disable it, or actually, if I keep it on, I can do this, right? I can move it up and down. That way I can kind of zoom into it. If I disable this, I can move the mouse, you can see, but there's no zooming happening. but I can still scroll. Vice versa, you can also disable scrolling if you don't want to. You can still do the drill downs, you can move with navigation arrows and so forth, but you're kind of forcing the user not to be able to freely move it around. You might ask, why would I want to do that? Well, in certain cases, it all depends again on the actual end user, right? And in some cases, it also depends on the environment where these reports are going to be used. So there's a lot of visual elements and they're very close to each other. It's very easy to accidentally, for example, let's say if I would have a longer page, like a porter page, and if I want to scroll down, and if I have a touch screen, for example, if I grab the chart, suddenly whoop, zooms in, and then I get confused, and I want to eliminate those things, right? So you're in control what happens with those things. So that's one thing, and the other thing, it's kind of a minor thing, but it's a nice touch. I'm happy about it. Is this option by default? The minor units on the x-axis are going to be left aligned, so you can align those also on the center. And if you go, for example, on quarters, you can see that what we did initially was displaying the first month of the quarter. But you also have that option to decide how you're going with this, whether with the full names or just the shortened names with Q1, Q2, and so forth. So it's a small little thing, but it's a very nice little touch, right? So yeah, can play around with that. What else? For the donut chart, what I decided to do is go for the channel of submission. The reason why I went with this is because we didn't have a lot of categories and we actually had a few which are very small in segmentation. So for example, if I remove the other slice, you can see we have a couple of them which are like 2%, 0.3, 0.14. This one, email, two submissions, not even 0.01%. So instead of using this, or if it would be a combo bar, right? Because everybody says, yeah, donuts are bad, use a combo bar. I don't think that it's gonna help me really. Let's see if I do this, right? Super informative slice, like bars, right? It all depends on the story that you're telling with it. So what I would have done here, or what I did here, is I enabled the others, and I just said that, hey, I want to focus on the top three, and the rest of them are going to be grouped into the others. Remember, by default, this is how it's going to be looking for you, to you, sorry. So by default, what we're using is a different scaling mechanism. We're reserving kind of a limited space for others and previous. Previous is shown when you go into the others. You can see it shows 97%, but that's not really 97% because it's scaling these slices relatively. So it's either this option, or if you're more kind of prone to having it on actual sizes, you can switch this to actual sizing mode, and then it's going to be on actual size. And if you open it, eh, comparing these are kind of impossible right now, but I wanted to have it like this because I wanted to see the actual contribution of all of those versus the top three contributors. So that's one of those things. What else? Another thing that we actually added is, remember when you were, or for those who have done this, some of you haven't done this. So in previous challenges, we have seen a lot of this. Let's say, let's disable the background for this, disable background for this, also this. Um, make this a little bit bigger for, because this is just a showcase, right? So you kind of put a card in there, so it kind of looks nice and neat, right? Kinda. The problem is that if you have a lot of size in the middle, like for example, if we go for 80%, I think it's gonna be a little bit better. Yeah, see, the card seems okay. I have a KPI metric. I can drill down. This kind of gets filtered as well. Company count probably wasn't the best option for the number. I'm gonna use complaint count. Sorry. Yeah, this one. There we go. So if I drill down, it filters the data. You can see the numbers. Looks good. But the problem with this is always there's layering, right? You have multiple elements. There's a card and there's a donut visual. So what happens is, depending on how big the card is, sometimes it obstructs the actual chart. What I mean by this, let's put it like this. Visually, sure, it's not fully centered, but you can still, it still looks okay, right? But because the container of the chart is so big, I can't even interact with the donut chart anymore because the card is in front of it, and vice versa. What happens sometimes is people create cards and then place a donut chart on top of it. Looks okay. I drill down, looks okay. But if I decide that the donut chart is actually going to have, for example, a background, it's invisible suddenly. Or if I don't have the background, let's put it back and do what I had done initially, like 60% radius. Amazing card, right? Super explanatory. So to avoid these little mistakes, we kind of gave you little tips and tricks, but we finally decided it's enough is enough. And what we did is we added two additional fields for you now, guys. So you have a KPI value and a KPI label. So for example, if I go for complaint count, I can add it as a KPI value. It's right here in the middle. For KPI card, now you have a separate configuration tab under the donut formatting options. And you can, of course, play around with the display units and so forth. So in my case, I'm using a none. Padding is this little segment right here that you're creating. But the main idea about this is that everything is now part of the same chart, right? It's not going to go in front or in the back. It's going to be visible at all times and it's going to be understandable. Sure, if I hover over it, it turns into the original kind of back view, but that's only when you hover over it directly. Otherwise, you have the current level, the previous reference layer, and the KPI value. If I increase the padding, I think padding goes currently up to 20 or something like that. So you can make it a little bit thicker as well. Or you can kind of replicate the native experience. I wouldn't recommend it because then you don't know if you're on the first or the third level of the drill down. But you can see if it's 0, there's no inner reference layers. So even if you go, please add just a little bit of padding. Probably not also 1. Yeah, because it's kind of impossible to see. But something like 5, 10, something like that would be enough. Because the main idea about these is to showcase what was previously selected. See? It shows you what previously I selected, what size it was, and everything. So just to again give you a little bit more control over how to tell the story and how to navigate through the report. So KPI values are also visible here. The name, the label for it, it doesn't automatically come from the value that you added here. You actually have to create either a measure or a calculated column which gives you. So I can just go for, let's call it KPI label, quotation marks, and this is going to be, and have it in the label. And then you can play around with it as well. So that's something new we added to the donut as well, because it's now going to be a lot easier to control it. You don't have to worry about an additional KPI card or something like that. It's of the same visual. So that goes for that. What else? In every single report, don't forget about the reset button. I know you're getting tired of me repeating this, but trust me, have very crucial. And the reason why it's important is because for those of you who are new to Power BI, what reset button basically means is you create a bookmark as a state of everything. Nothing has been currently selected. The main reason why you want to have this bookmark is, for example, if I go to one, I also select something here, then I drill down here, I select one of the dates. So I have applied a lot of different variables and I don't know what exactly I've done. Start over, right? One option is, of course, going to secondary page, come back. Hopefully everything's going to be okay. But if you have slicers and things like that, it's not really going to work because slicers are kind of permanent. So the other option is if I drill down for select something here, and if I have a bookmark, click on that bookmark to reset the view. And the reset button is just a very simple basic blank button. All you have to do is go to style, text. You don't even have to do this. This is extra already, but I just wanted the users this button is. If you create a button, my recommendation is create at least 10 designs. What I mean by this is there's a state for default when it's just a state for hover. The reason why you want to create a different state is because you want people to is an active button. So even doing something as simple as I just did here, increasing the size and making, for example, the letter bold, see, it kind of psychologically makes you feel that something active. Whereas if I hover over this, it could be an element, it could work, could not. You know, there's things that we're used to by now as human beings. So enable action, bookmark, and rest of reset bookmark that you created. It's an active button for reset. So select something, drill down, set, start fresh, right? Pretty simple to use. The main idea, you always just have a particular point to go back to. Order of things. You also probably just noticed I moved a couple of things around. Why I did this? Whenever you create a new element, it's always going to be top of the list of selection panel. Selection panel is basically a list of all the elements that you have on this page. So if I would have a button here, it means that it takes higher priority than anything else. And one of the things that I have created here, I'm going to show how to do it as well, is for example, you can see this little bar. And what I wanted to do in this report is actually kind of create an option of an overview of all the complaints, timeline with regions, the map, different referral points, and so forth. And I want the user to be able to look at this based on a company profile. But I don't want it to have like 10 different slicers at the top or at the side. So I just created this little bar, which allows me to open up the company profile slicers. I can apply things. For example, the company scored. Apparently that breaks something. Okay, so can't go above it. We'll have to check what's there with the data. You can see where this is going, right? I apply my company profile. Okay, so something with these. I have to check afterwards. Okay, but okay, I apply the filters. I can look at the data now, selections, and if I just want to reset, what do we have here? A reset button. Start fresh. The reason why this button, again, why I mentioned the order of things is because it's at the top. You can see now if I open it, it's kind of vague because it's kind of hard to see of the design, but I'm going to quickly add a fill color. Sorry, untransparent. Put an orange. Oh, that's on hover. Sorry. I was confused. Why is it not changing? Working with Power BI for a while, but even I sometimes get confused. So the behavior. I have the button right here. Open this panel. It's still on top of it, right? Because it's updating. But if I move a couple of things around, so with the menu panel, we actually higher priority, so that when I open it, it's on top of the previous. The button is still there. You can see if I hide it, it's still there. The element gets brought in front of it. This is why I highly encourage you to just play around with what you created. And one of the best ways to test things is somebody else. Remember, the worst tester actually is the person who created it, because you know what this is supposed to do. You know what to expect from it. Whereas a user who has never seen this or used it before, he doesn't know. Be smashing buttons randomly. And that's where you see different edge cases, different issues that arise, and you're like, okay, didn't think about a scenario like that. So gonna have to fix that. And that's one of the ways on how you play things, right? That's the way on how you test the reports. What I probably would have done as well here is I didn't have the time to do it, but when I open up this menu, you can see it kind of goes on top of the charts. And since I haven't created an apply all slicer button, because there is an option to do something like that under insert buttons, not navigator, but apply all slicers, there is this as well. So you can add a specific button that it works only on slicers, which when it's present, what it does, I'm just going to also add that button by block of items, so it belongs to the same group, um, which does the following. I can apply different or slicer modifications, you can see, but none of them have live. Only at the press of the button are they going to be sent live. So it's something that you can play around with. Reset. So apply slicers is an option that you can look into, but just make sure that it is something that you want to have there. I want that the user to be able to look at the changes live whenever he's changing something. Because for example, this is a good use case for myself, right? If I select medium, you can see in this visual. Okay, so I need to understand what I haven't done properly. Why is this breaking? Whether it's the calculation or maybe it's the connection between the data. But if I find this, that's the point where I can investigate further. That's why you need to play around with what you create. But the thing that I had to do here, I just didn't have enough time, is I actually wanted to push everything kind of to the side when the panel opens so that it's not on top of the visual, but kind of the visuals get squeezed to the side a little bit. You can do that. It's not super straightforward, maybe. Expanded. I'm going to create a group of collapsed. What I've been doing. This isn't the best approach on how to achieve this, but this is an idea so you can get it. Um, and the positioning kind of okay. So once I have these, what I would have done is whenever it's lapsed the menu, I want to see the full view. Whenever it's expanded for this group, I actually want to push it a little together. I'm gonna hide the other one and actually open it up so I can see how far I need to move it. So something like this. There we go. And collapse is now visible. Perfect. A lot of different variations you can see, a lot of different groups come into play, and this is the reason why it seems simple, but customizing is one of the tricky parts sometimes. So what we're gonna do now is actually update the filter bookmarks. So the filter bookmarks, what I have here is basically for opening and closing, right? And what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to say that this is the closed option, which means that I want to save a view like this, and I need these four highlighted. This is the closed option, and then basically I'm going to go in reverse, select all four, and update the open bookmark. I think I just over. There we go. Quick test. So now whenever I open it, it rescales a bit. But there's some drawbacks to this as well. When it comes to chart performance or the report performance, right? Of just opened the menu and closed, the reloading basically works only. We can actually make a new bookmark. Why am I telling all this data? Selected visuals, and I'm just gonna do this. So the menu is actually on top, and this is gonna be this. Open, close. Yeah, there we go. So let's clear. It's running. Let's see. If I open up the filter menu, you can see this is all the refreshes that are have reported itself. If I just click, or if I use the big ones, there's a lot of elements that are getting reloaded. But if I just open one part of it, it only opens up those elements, not everything. So it's a matter of finding out sort of the fine line between, okay, how much am I willing to sacrifice this for performance? At the end of the day, it's probably something you have to discuss with the customer, because sometimes with almost completely draining the performance just to make sure that it looks exactly like the times not so much. So talking to the customer is going to allow you to understand how things are going and what you need to focus on. So timeline, that's that. For the donut, it's that. For this part right here, something that you can play around with. But like I said, my main idea is just basically have a company profile where I can define the profile itself and then close it and look at the data. What I would actually highly recommend is the following. Whenever I apply these filters, let's say reputation again, lower this, find something that the chart doesn't break. Do this, yes. Okay, no, maybe it works, no, okay. So I have applied a couple of options for the slicers. I close it, and if I'm looking at it right now, there is absolutely nothing that indicates that this is a filtered view, right? So having something like a dynamic slice, dynamic title would actually also be very beneficial to just see what are the currently applied filters. There's different variations on how you can apply this. You can work with selected values. There's different YouTube videos on how to create dynamic titles. If you don't want to look at different YouTube videos, one of the things that I cannot emphasize enough is don't forget that you have access to every single one of the previous challenges. So for example, let's open up Onyx Data September. Let's look at some of these. Don't think it had dynamic titles there. This one maybe. I don't remember who, but somebody had a very good dynamic title. This. No. Trying to see if I can title part, which is dynamic. You can go through all of these. Maybe? No. Okay, never mind. Then we're just gonna go to report examples. And we're gonna take one of these, because for these ones at least I know where to look for, right? And let's take this one. So what I mean by dynamic titles is this is just one of the examples. There's different variations. It's a live session. Why would it be fast? Oh, it's taken. But what you see here, for example, is multiple countries, multiple brands, because I'm everything. However, if I, for example, click on US, and that is the country that I'm setting, filter gets passed to every other visual. It's very slow today. Oh, come on. It's not that massive a filter. Slowly but surely, you can see now it stays. So that's something you can look into as well. Because the main reason why this would be recommended is if you have applied anything and you have all these slicers, if I look at the whole thing, I don't see a difference anymore, right? I can see the KPIs, they're fine, the timeline, data numbers have switched, but I don't know what I'm looking at. So there's some emphasis on whether I'm looking, let's say, just a simple view, a filtered view. You're giving me the full title, current countries, all countries, or a specific country, all states or specific state, and so forth. One region or all regions. There's different ways on how to handle this. So that's something that I would definitely add as well. Um, for the map visual, actually, there's also a couple of things that you can do. Let me just copy this. I want to have two versions of it right next to each other. So let's say this is one of the views that I'm working with, right? What I have here is essentially clustered nodes with different categories and conditional formatting applied to the shape layer. So I can see which shapes or which state are the heat points, basically. And based on the current amount, clusters, it seems like there should be some information also here, but remember, there's information underneath it. So maybe the best option is not to have any fill color. There's actually no fill, so you can see the states underneath it, right? You can see it kind of split up and splits up, whereas this one is still very value heavy. So maybe something like the clustering distance is something you have to adjust to make sure that, okay, it's a little bit understand and so forth. So, but this is one of the options. The alternative is when you don't use whatsoever. So you create another copy. And the reason why I wanted to do this side by side is because one of the things that I usually recommend is as well when developing a report. Delete straight away your creations or do not always overwrite your creations. Copy right next to it and just see which one you like better. If you don't still know which one you like, keep it on a separate page. Maybe you're gonna come back to it. Because trust me, sometimes reworking some patch takes a lot longer than just to have it there whilst you're developing. Then when you're finished with the report, then you can delete all the unnecessary elements, everything. Just have like me, one page, I played around with something here, something here. Just name them, for example, map timeline samples. I don't know. Call it something you understand. But yeah, let's go ahead and say I want to have any clustering. Yeesh. Looks because I have a category applied to it. I don't need a category. I just want to have the data. Okay, a little bit better. What else I could do? There's still a lot of them. I don't want to use clustering. But one thing I could play around with is the min-max radius. So let's go ahead and say that these are a little bit bigger or smaller. Okay, that kind of helps the situation, but not really. What else we can do? Maybe I can cluster it, not have the donut charts, but just the clusters with the fill color, which still could be purple, for example, just to kind of have an overall idea where data is. Uh, then enable your best map visual, which is the zoom number. Zoom number is this little number right here. The reason why it's so important or why it's one of your best friends is because when you're developing, you need to know what zoom you are on in order to, for example, figure out when you want to disable clustering. So I'm using clustering. The clustering is going to go for 70%. But after level 5, it's going to split into single nodes. So we still have clustered nodes. We still have clustered nodes. You can see it because one of the states doesn't have any information. After level 5, every single state is going to have a dot. Now you might think, who's actually going to go this deep into states whenever we need it? That's why you have to play around with them. So I can go ahead and say, okay, actually after level 4, I'm splitting clusters. If we add another visual, like for example, what I had here is the census region and division. Let's add it to the third page. Again, these copies, I'm playing around. So if I go for example, south, maybe this is the view that I want to control this. Okay, so it controls the zoom basically by selecting. I want to make sure that on this view, it's always split. So you start looking at the value. We can see that clearly clustering is too wide here. So I have to lower it 50%. Not enough. A lot of states are very close to each other in relative pixels. So maybe something like 20. Okay. If I go, how bad does it look? Maybe something in between, like 30. I guess 30 is going to work for now. So you always just play around with things. If there would be just one straightforward solution for everything, my life would be easy. But if there's really not, it's a matter of playing around, seeing what works for you, like this, right? Even if we put in back the fill colors and everything, somebody just like sort of overview. Somebody's gonna like this, then come back to you and just be like, but I don't need the map, for example, itself. Well, okay, we do have, I don't have it added, but second. Shape Pro. Because if I'm only working on a state level, there's really no for the world map, right? Because the world map is needed when you need streets or a little bit more in details like terrain or something. But if you're just working with a state level, see the benefit of an actual map behind it. Like this is what I mean. You can see there's national parks and things like that, but nobody's. But in order to showcase, it's a lot of data that needs to be loaded in because every single one of these little bits and pieces is basically an image. You see, it's loading in, and I don't need those images. Just add or not add. Go. What is happening? Shape Map Pro. Quickly adding and successful. Perfect. Switch. Sure. Okay. So we can see there's also data in Alaska and Hawaii, but it's very small in comparison. And because of this, I kind of have to zoom in. Like nobody said you had to use all of the data. Filter on this page, for example. I don't need Alaska and where's Hawaii? HI, I think. There we go. Okay, I can even zoom in a little bit closer, make the map a little bit bigger, something like this. Then the base layer minimum zoom is like, so that every single time somebody comes to the map, he's in this view, right? It's not far away, it's not too close. It's up to you, a developer, to play around with these things, to find the initial state, to see what happens when the cross filtering is starting to happen. Does the map still make sense? Is it detailed? Do I need more detail with it? It's all up to those little bits and pieces. So yeah, definitely what I would highly recommend just for you is play around with things. Play around with different visuals. Don't always try to do exactly the same thing. See what else is out there. Look at some of the other creators. What are they doing? Maybe there's something that you really like what they did, but you don't know how to do it. So make it your challenge to create something like that this time, right? Don't copy paste the design. That's a no-no. But if you find certain things like, I don't know, for example, something like an expandable collapsible menu, right? How somebody else did it, because I'm definitely not the only one who does this, right? There's there's a lot of different variations for this. Just play around, have fun with at the end of the day. Also, if you do have any questions regarding the developer's licenses, because I know it's a new, right? So you might get confused, might not fully understand everything that I said or the blog post says, don't hesitate and reach out to us. Again, webinars@z.com is the email. Alexander, maybe you can post that email as well in there as well. Yeah, get in touch with us, ask questions, let us know anything that might concern you, or if you get stuck on something. And of course, after all of this, right? If you haven't done it, just gonna give you a little hint. Register. Register to the event. Go create your dashboards. You can get the data set right here. And yeah, let us know what you created. We're gonna give you also personalized feedback. Is good, what maybe should be improved to have better chances of winning. And if you want to follow this through and see how this all, if we go to the timeline, top 5, don't forget to also register for this webinar. So the top 5 webinar is basically where we're going to the top 5 reports, reviewing them, giving further feedback on what's good, what's bad, what should be improved, and so forth. And at the end of the day, announcing the winner. So it's a very good kind of option or way on to see what's working. All right. Well, I hope it was interesting, insightful for you guys, that you managed to learn something new and actually useful. Because new is very simple, right? But learning something useful, it's a little more tricky. But that's the main thing to provide. If I did that, I'm happy. If not, do let us know that in the feedback, and we'll see what we can do about it. All right. Have an amazing rest of the day, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.